Hello, my sassy scholars. We are here to talk about the American Romantic movement and what does that mean? So you probably registered for this class and you thought, we're going to talk about Danielle Steele and Fabio. You are wrong. You couldn't be more wrong because the American Romantic period has nothing to do with any of that sissy romantic stuff. No, it has all to do with nature. So let's dive in and dig deep and see what we can find out about it. So, the American Romantic literary movement emerged in the late 18th century and then kind of like reached its peak in the 19th century. And it was a response to the Age of Enlightenment's emphasis on reason, scientific inquiry, and social norms. So if you think about like a pendulum, right? Literature, art, music, it always is swinging sort of back and forth. And so that pendulum is never stopped in one area. So you'll find some writers at the beginning of the movement who are kind of a little bit both romantic and, part of the Age of Enlightenment. And then as the pendulum swings, and we get to the other side, we'll find people who are writing romantic and realist things. So in the swing of the American Romantic movement, it is they are responding to what the world was like before. So what came before them? Well, if you think about it, what came before them was the Americans' desire to become an independent nation. And so a lot of the writing had to do with, independence and becoming, becoming free of the, British rule and things like that. And then we had the writings of the Puritans who were writing sermons and really telling people how to live, right? So the American Romantic period really is the first time that we in our American culture come across writers who are truly American. And so that's like really exciting, right? So we're going to see poetry by Poe. We're going to see poetry by Whitman. We're going to see short stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne. We're going to read essays by Thoreau. We don't pronounce it Thoreau. That's wrong. They corrected me when I was up there. Thoreau and Emerson, right? So it's an exciting period of time to be a writer, to be a thinker in this new American culture. And so the American Romantic period celebrates individualism. It celebrates nature and emotion, the supernatural. They're trying to figure out and explore the inner self and the mysteries of existence. Why are we here? This was the most profound beginning to American literature, to art, to American philosophy, and the legacy has lasted until today. So, who were the first people to do it? Well, one of the first people to write in this new style, this new American style, is a fellow called Washington Irving. And he's really considered like the first American Romantic writer. And you might have heard of some of his stories. We just, depending on when you take this class, to me now in November, we just celebrated Halloween. What's a popular Halloween story? The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, right? Rip Van Winkle, which is what we're going to read for this class, showcased elements of folklore, the supernatural, and the beauty of the American landscape. So we have this unique literature that's not borrowed from Great Britain. It's not based on things over in England. It's our own, right? The other theme that we're going to sort of really grapple with is a very fancy term called transcendentalism. And that's a very, very big word. But all it really means is that this was a philosophical movement, and it was led by a fellow named Ralph Waldo Emerson and his buddy Henry David Thoreau. And it emphasized the inherent goodness of people and nature. And their works, like Emerson's essays and Thoreau's Walden, focused on self-reliance, individuality, and the importance of intuition and spirituality. No longer was spirituality a job of the church. It's a job of the human, and God's within us. And we're going to study that. And we're also going to play this amazing game called Walden, where you'll kind of get a feel for, what Thoreau was doing and how he felt about the world. So keep all those things in mind. Now, we have key themes and characteristics that I'm going to come back to often. And as you watch, remember that you're going to watch Dead Poets Society every assessment ties back to Dead Poets Assignment, Dead Poet Society, right? So keep these themes in mind because I'm going to be asking you about them, right? First of all, is the number one thing that American Romanticism is about is nature. The Romantic writers revered nature as a source of inspiration, beauty, and spiritual revival. They often write about the landscape and how it's majestic and how it's powerful, and connecting with nature is connecting with God, and their writing really has to do with the human connection between humans and the natural world. So we'll see a lot of references to nature, and that we are part of nature and nature is part of us. We'll also be talking about emotion and individualism. And remember, when they're writing, we're kind of a new country, right? When you think about how many years England has been around, or how long Scotland's been around, or Germany, or Australia, we are a pretty new nation when these folks are writing, right? So, the American culture was built on this idea of individualism, that we don't need to rely on England. We don't need to rely on the artwork of France. We have everything we need right here, right? So the Romantics celebrated human emotions, intuition, and imagination. And they advocated for an individual's freedom of expression and exploring one's unique identity. So they were the first punk rockers, kind of, in the American movement. And they talked a lot about supernatural and Gothic elements. And so sometimes when you look at, you compare, the essays of Emerson and then the works of Edgar Allan Poe, you think, well, how are they related? How are they in the same group? Well, it's because we're exploring the supernatural, and Gothicism is a form of the supernatural, and supernatural is part of that unique connection between humans and nature, right? So many Romantic writers incorporated the elements of the supernatural, the mysterious, the macabre, into their works, and Poe is probably the most famous. So Poe looked at madness and death and unknown in his poetry and short stories, and we're going to get to that. Now, a lot of people love Poe, and they have fond memories, and they're like, oh, Poe, I read that in high school. You probably read a watered-down version of some of his works, because when we get to it, a lot of students say, I don't remember it being this difficult. That's because you probably watched the Simpsons version. So remember that for all of our writers, there was no TV. So there wasn't like TikTok that you could go on and check things out. You actually had to read things. So authors had to really put in a lot of details. So that makes the writings longer than we are usually accustomed to today. So all of those details are there. The final theme I want to talk about is just the critique of industrialization. Because remember, what's going on at this time is this rise in industrialism. And in the course that comes after this, realism and naturalism, we talk about that, the mad rush to New York for jobs from Italians and Irish and German immigrants coming over, right? And so the Romantic movement is much more about that individualist perspective, and sort of not about industry and factory work and things like that. So Nathaniel Hawthorne, in the Scarlet Letter, he critiques the negative effects of industrialization. And also, with the Scarlet Letter, he's also criticizing sort of those societal constraints that come through, tradition or religion that impact people. So some of the authors I've already talked about: Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick. We're going to be talking about Moby Dick, and we're going to talk about sea shanties. Herman Melville, interestingly enough, worked on a whaling boat. And so if you are at all familiar with sea shanties, are a lot of fun. You're going to get to listen to a few of them. And we're going to talk about, how Herman Melville sort of came up with the ideas of writing Moby Dick. So how did it all end? Well, unfortunately, during this time, and we saw the rise of people really paying attention to what was going on And, there wasn't like the internet, there wasn't like real access to kind of see what was going on in other places, but the people in the North wanted to stop slavery, and so a war broke out. So the American Civil War is the end of the American Romantic period, and then we move into the Realist period, where people are seeing destruction and death all around them, right? So, industrialization, social changes, the Civil War, that really, built up the realist and naturalist movement, and the writing really focused more on everyday life, the issues of society, and observations about society. And so there was less patience for the lofty ideas of the Romantics. So, welcome to class. Make sure you take notes. Go back and listen to this again. Make sure you have these notes handy because you will want them for some of our assignments this week. I am wishing you all the very best, and I will see you in the next video. All right. Take care.